Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson reloading podcast. I am your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week we read Chapter 2 of Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse. The Vice Principal gets a missile launcher. He certainly does get a missile launcher.
So he's not what I thought, exactly. Dr. Thorne. I kind of was misdirected by his name, I think. I assumed it must be plant-related. I don't know.
I mean, to most people, I guess, yeah, he shoots thorns, so of course he's going to be a manticorn.
Yeah, I guess, like, those are thorn. Okay, I see.
I guess. They're spikes.
For some reason, the thorn I associate more with plants? I don't know.
So it's like one of those things where you have, like, an evil-sounding name, so obviously you need to be an evil person.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, we talked about this, like, it's a little over the top, some of the naming conventions here.
So when it comes to, like, evil names, like, especially in fantasy, like, a lot of the times they usually, this is, like, a weird thing that I know, a lot of them have, like, either, like, sharp sounds in the beginning or sharp sounds at the end, like, Sadius, or, like, Jackus is another term, like, it's just, like, you need to have, like, a sharp-sounding word, or something that's either, like, really easy to say or very long to say for when it comes to evil characters.
That's true. There's kind of no middle ground, right, when it comes to villains. They either have very, like, curt names or they have incredibly, like, long, spooky names.
No, or they have titles. Like, usually, like, look at Count Olaf.
Like Count Olaf.
Even though he technically doesn't have a title.
Like, why is he a count?
I want to say that's actually his first name.
No, I think it's his honorific. That's what in the Netflix show they say it's an honorific. But yeah, in this case, he's a doctor, Dr. Thorne.
One of my favorite things about Series of Unfortunate Events with Count Olaf is every one of his characters only has one name, except for...
Oh, well, Dr. Matthias or whatever.
That's a title. That's still Dr. Then you have Matthias.
Dr. Matthias Medical School is like a thing that they did on the Netflix show, but not in the books.
No, and even like with Jessica haircut, but I'm talking specifically about the books.
Jessica.
But yeah, it's like the interesting thing is you either have a character that has like one name like Cher or Prince, or you have a two-sounding name.
Yeah, a mononym.
Another good example would be Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You have a villain like Veruca Salt. Both things are kind of like ugly-sounding names.
Yeah, or then what's the name of that other guy? Slugworth?
Yeah, Slugworth.
That's such a... I mean, Roald Dahl was super into, like, naming his villains in a very specific way. Like, even, what's her name? Like, Mrs. Trunchbull. Like, he wasn't being subtle at all when he named his villains.
Especially when it comes to, like, Rick Riordan, like, Gabe Ugliano. I mean, it doesn't take, like, an expert to realize, like, oh, you're supposed to hate this guy. His last name literally is ugly.
I feel like YA especially is prone to having names that are like so over the top when it comes to describing what the character's like. We've talked about this with J.K. Rowling and like the naming of like Remus Lupin and other characters like that where you're like, oh, there's like really a very specific meaning behind why you picked this thing and it kind of comes across. And then Daniel Handler obviously has his own literary thing where it's like, oh, Mr. Poe's kids are Edgar and Albert and like the Baudelaires are named after the poet Charles Baudelaire. Like, there's always these little references and things going on. So I'm always interested to kind of...
Or the Quagmires with Isadora Duncan.
Yeah, exactly. Isadora Duncan, the dancer. And then also Quagmire literally meaning a difficult situation, like as a word.
Well, also, okay, so if we like talk about Series of Unfortunate Events, a lot of the times it's just a bunch of literary references or just small things that only made Daniel Handler chuckle. And then everyone's like, oh, what does this mean? Same as with, like an example is Ishmael. Please, just call me Ish.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God.
To, like, subvert that, yeah. Dr. Thorne's a pretty, like, over-the-top... He sounds like a Bond villain, really, almost. He acts kind of like a Bond villain. Did you notice that? I feel like that really came across once he started, like, revealing himself for what he truly is, which is a manticore. I was, like, struck by how... like, campy his dialogue seemed to be. I don't know. There was just something about him that was, like, very cut from that specific villain cloth.
The way that I'm looking at this chapter, as well as the first part and second part, are supposed to be, like, a rescue operation. So I can see where you get, like, that Bond-esque idea, because, for God's sakes, there's a helicopter, like an attack Apache helicopter coming at these kids. And you have all these big old things, because we were so used to, like, Just like little small things like, oh, a gym explosion. Oh, the bus explodes.
Right, they're like smaller villains, yeah. I mean, I guess there was the whole thing with the St. Louis Arch and stuff, but yeah, there's something about the setting of this. I think also because probably it's a military school that like there might be some sort of inspiration there as far as like the types of villain that you're going to encounter.
Well, also they're in the spooky location of Maine during like the winter.
Maine is a spooky location.
I mean, like in any other given universe, Stephen King would be Dr. Thorne.
That would be so funny if they cast him as Dr. Thorne. And he did like a little French accent.
Well, I mean, if you've seen Creepshow, you've seen Stephen King act.
Oh, yeah, he's not great at acting, right?
No, like, he's like a mixture of like Jerry Lewis and like a person that's just manic.
You can do cameos, but that's about it. Now I'm really seeing all of like the specific like type of villain tropes that Dr. Thorne is falling into. Like he literally has like a walkie-talkie that he talks into, and he has like code language. The package, it is ready to deliver. Like he's a spy or something.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to it, I feel like it's very much like a Bond-esque opening of having. Usually what happens is in a Bond movie, you see the beginning of like the mini adventure usually. It's actually, I think a better example would be Indiana Jones, where you have the mini adventure before to set up the characters, and then you have this is where everything goes wrong.
You even have the part with Percy doing the whole like goading him on to say more of his plan to distract him so he can think of a plan to escape. Like that's a very specific Bond villain thing too, of like, oh no, we're cornered and there's no way to escape, but if I can distract you long enough then there's a way to get our friends to help or whatever. In this case, he's not like phoning for help the way that like a secret agent would, but instead he has the empathy link with Grover, so he's just trying to like will Grover to understand that he's in trouble somehow. It's
very action-oriented, and I really enjoy that, especially when you have the idea of Percy Jackson's completely powerless, and he needs to rely on his friends. A lesson that he's been slowly learning, because, he used to be very gung-ho about everything. He's just like, I'll do it myself. I'm Percy Jackson.
Yeah, and now he's asking for help. Yeah, I mean, he did kind of do it himself in the sense that he went the other direction of his friends because he saw Principal Thorne taking, sorry, I keep forgetting the names of the kids, Nico and Bianca. So he sees them and runs off, but then he always, in his mind, had, like, the backup plan of hoping that his friends would find him because he can't take on this villain himself. I like that they call back to the empathy link thing because I do think that, like, I remembered about the empathy link and it's always in the back of my mind as far as him and Grover are concerned. But because so much of Sea of Monsters was focused on Grover being in trouble and Percy going to rescue him, I think it's easy to forget that it goes both ways, so to speak. Like it's like a channel that he can then summon Grover to help him when he's in a time of need. And that's kind of something that like it could slip your mind. So I'm glad that it like resurfaces here and comes in handy because that's like a cool mechanism to like see how that works plot wise.
Well, I mean, the great thing about it is it has a setup and a payoff because, Sea of Monsters is the setup. And that, thank God, Percy and Grover didn't dissolve that empathy link or everything would be screwed. And then you have the payoff again where it actually pays off by Percy saying, you know what? Let's keep this empathy link just in case something bad were to happen because you are my best friend, bro. Aw, bro.
Yeah, and it like justifies why they did that because in some ways it's more dangerous too. It's like the cost benefit of that if one of them dies, then the other dies. So that in some ways is worse for them. But they can also like silently signal to the other that they're in danger, which I didn't really understand how the empathy worked exactly, like, because they even say in this chapter, like, he wasn't sure if just closing his eyes and thinking about him being in danger that Grover would understand that he was in trouble or that he would have to go to sleep and have a dream, like, which was how Percy was able to communicate with Grover, at least see what was happening. So it's kind of like a nebulous thing of how it works. I guess you're always emotionally connected, and if you will it hard enough, then there's a way to indicate that they're in trouble.
Well, the way I'm looking at it is a lot like the idea of like the tricorder in Star Trek. It does whatever you need it to do under any given circumstance, even though all it's supposed to do is just give readings. Like, oh, we could use this to destroy and disrupt so-and-so machine. And like, okay, let's use a tricorder for this. It's the same here with just... it's convenient for plot's sake, and you know what? That's fine to have a thing like this. It's magical, so it can do whatever it needs to do. We don't really have a rule set for it. There isn't like a D&D like rule book that says, "Oh, it only works under these conditions."
Which we're gonna get into actually about D&D, which is pretty funny. When I saw the references to that, I was like, "Oh, no wonder Zach likes these books."
In my head, because I love fantasy, that's pretty much all that I read. Is that if you have to have a rule set for magic, it needs to either be established or it can pretty much do whatever you need as long as, there's like
as long as it's not overpowered. Because if magic's overpowered, then it's just kind of boring. But if it's not strong enough, then it's useless. So you kind of have to strike that balance. I think the empathy link works because it's just helpful enough, but it's not just like a Deus Ex Machina where like they could use it all the time, because it's only between Grover and Percy, and even then you have to count on the other person to come and help you.
Like when it comes to like the magic system in this with the empathy link, it's great because here are the pros and here's the cons. The pros is that Percy can contact Grover or Grover can contact Percy, and that's great. He can either go in their dreams or I guess alert them. The con is if Percy or Grover dies, the other person dies as well.
And then they're like down 2 people when they have like this team kind of established, and that would be like a real blow to everyone else in the team too, like Annabeth and Talia. So,
well, even like if we look at the magic system, let's look at Percy's sword. It works against monsters, but doesn't work against people, which is a brilliant thing to have in a kid's book because it's like, oh, Percy can't really, kill certain people, but he can kill monsters, and the sword will always return to him. There's no way of like breaking down that. Same as with like, I guess like a lightsaber, you turn it on and you can cut through pretty much anything, or at least melt through anything.
Yeah, what's the name of Luke's weapon that is celestial bronze and steel, so it can kill both?
Oh, Backbiter.
Backbiter, yeah. And so that's like a nice contrast, right, is that he can kill humans too, because he's the kind of person who would kill humans. Like, it makes sense that he would need a sword that did both.
Well, yeah, and it also establishes that he's a villain, because you can do it with subtlety like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he would have the moral, like, need to kill a human on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's kind of like one of those things that's like very subtle, and that's why I kind of enjoy the magic system in this book, is because it's very subtle. We have the mist. Yes, it does other kooky, crazy things, but at least it has, like, it's grounded in some sense of reality. Same as with the empathy link, as well as even the swords and even all the weapons with celestial bronze, and even how monsters work.
It's kind of funny now that we're talking about weapons, like, there's this dual meaning of the chapter title, right, where it's like the principal gets a rocket launcher or whatever, or like a missile launcher, I think is the name of the chapter. And it's kind of vague because in some ways the Manticore launches like these missiles of thorns at Percy and it has poison in it. But then all of a sudden, then he talks into the walkie-talkie and this helicopter comes and it has laser guided rockets mounted to it. So now we're dealing with like human weapons, which is again such a weird thing to see in this like modern mythology thing that Rick Riordan has created. You kind of almost forget the existence of human weapons, and then all of a sudden to like see like modern military weaponry against like a bronze sword, it's kind of a funny juxtaposition.
Well, see, that's kind of like the idea of urban fantasy, and you take all these ideas that are conventionally like very medieval, and then you apply them to like modern things like, oh, a wizard drives a car, or like a wizard has a gun, or you have all these like fun... Yeah, no, it happens.
That one gif of Harry Potter where he shoots Voldemort.
Oh no, that's my favorite, and the one where it's Gandalf holding up an AK-47. It's like, this is crafted by the elves.
Yeah, that'll never stop being funny. The idea of just a magical person shooting someone like, well, we're done. Going home now.
Oh yeah, no, that's why like there's so many great like series with deals with like urban fantasy or at least steampunk. Like there's a book series where it's just like, oh, what if these people can control metal and they have guns? Like, what do you do with that information?
Oh, so they're like metal benders or whatever.
We could easily talk about magic systems. Actually, we can kind of talk about it right now because we're going to get into magic systems a little bit. That when it comes to magic systems, they need to work on a level that's either like based in reality or you can do whatever the truck you want with them. Because if you have something that's just like, oh, I could just summon a dragon, it's not good literary stuff.
Yeah, if Percy could just be like, and now a magical sea creature dragon appeared out of nowhere and saved all of us. Like, sometimes things like that happen, but to less of an extent.
Yeah, see, that's why I like the idea of that gods don't interfere with people's, like, most of the time.
Yeah, that's also a helpful thing. But then, in this chapter, we kind of talk a little bit about what's counted as interference and not.
Yes, and we're gonna get to that like right now because Percy's wounded and he's bleeding out and he's kind of like, oh no, it hurts, but secretly he's just like, Grover, get here, SOS, please. Hello, is this the god?
And so, do you think that Grover realized the empathy link thing and that's how he knew he was in trouble, or did he just go, oh well, I guess Percy's missing, we should go find him? Because I feel like either way that would have happened, right?
So the way I'm thinking about it is yes, it probably worked, but it's probably more like a beacon that just showed him where to go.
Than having a vision. Like, he didn't, see it the way that Percy would see Grover on the Sea of Monsters.
So it would be more like a spider sense, almost. I feel like they would just be like, oh, Percy's in danger. Oh, no.
But you could guess that Percy's in danger because the vice principal's missing, the two half-bloods are missing, and Percy's gone, too, and he's, separated from the group, so there's kind of just a strong probability that he's in trouble anyway. Percy's just really kind of telegraphing the specifics of his issue and where he is. So if Grover didn't pick that up, then he's just sort of randomly walking around the campus of this spooky school.
I want to say yes, it works because one, this is a magical story where we've already had it proved that, this empathy link works, but also you either have either or where it's either it works or it doesn't, or you have either the comedy shot where Percy's trying to contact Grover and Grover's dancing and doesn't hear the empathy link. You either get one or the other at that point.
I think but they're already on high alert, so I feel like it's not even that necessary. I don't know, unless they were in a very obscure place and him doing the empathy link specifically signaled to Grover the location they were in, sort of like how it worked in Sea of Monsters with Percy finding Grover.
The other thing to keep in mind is that Percy's actually hurt and damaged, so I'm sure Grover felt it. It's almost like Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, where the brother and sister, if brother gets a cut, the sister gets a cut in the same location. I feel like that might be something that they would do as well.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know how far the empathy link goes. I mean, you would know because you've read these books, but... Well,
it's like Grover didn't get injured while on the island, so you don't know, that side of the story.
So you don't actually know. He was just in peril a lot.
Yeah, so it's Percy's why do I have so much anxiety all the time?
You live like this? So I have one question about Thorne using the walkie-talkie. Let me just read it and see if you notice something funny about this passage. There was a garbled reply, and I realized Thorne was in walkie-talkie mode. This seemed way too modern and creepy, a monster using a mobile phone. What strikes you as weird about that?
I know exactly what you're talking about because there's those cell phones that used to be, I remember they advertised them.
Yes, the push-to-talk... Motorola cell phones that every dad had. My dad had one, and it was yellow and black, and it clipped to his belt. Do you remember when every dad had a Motorola that clipped to his belt?
So for all the younglings out there, they used to be they used to advertise phones that were you can use them as a cell phone, or you could use them as a walkie-talkie. They had both features.
Yep. Yeah, I had that.
But no, that was the first thing I thought of because this is so steeped in the time that it's written that's almost hilarious.
It really is. Because at first that could just strike you as oh, I guess he's using the phone to talk to someone. But the specific, he was in walkie-talkie mode. That's such a specific thing of phones of the time that definitely no phones have that anymore. I guess if people still have their weird Motorola's from 2006, but probably not.
I'm just expecting it to be then Mr. Thorne pulled out his phone and he was able to surf on the internet. That's weird.
And then he took out his BlackBerry and his little stylus and he wrote down an appointment that said, kill Percy.
Oh, it's going to be later on in the books, Dr. Thorne pulls out his phone. It's Siri, kill Percy at 10 p.m. But, I mean, it's fascinating when you have the idea of everything's just steeped in this like early to mid 2000s culture of just, I think it actually kind of makes it timeless just a little bit.
I mean, yeah, what was like playing on the dance floor again that we made fun of last episode?
Oh, it was Jesse McCarthy and Green Day.
Everything about this smacks of a certain time period.
Well, yeah, especially here with like this mobile phone. But I guess the funny thing is it's so outdated that it actually becomes like timeless. Just a bit.
It becomes funny again. Yeah, it's like interesting. Like, oh, right. Yeah, I remember those phones. It's almost nostalgia now.
Yeah, and I'm surprised because, you know, these books keep making new editions of them. They're not doing like I know they do this in R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike books where they try to update the references.
Oh, they update the references. Yeah, because I could see them going back and being like, instead of Jesse McCartney, they're playing, I don't know, what do kids listen to now?
Big Time Rush? Wait, that's
no,
old.
They don't. That was even older. Or like the same time, pretty much. Yeah, it's playing, I literally can't think of any music that children listen to now.
Oh no, then Thalia pulls out her phone and starts doing a TikTok.
TikTok is literally from 10 years ago also. That song came out when we were in high school. Like, oh my god, I literally can't think of a single band that people would like now. I'm just blank. It would be like, it'd be playing Despacito.
Ugh.
But I'm trying to think of like the modern equivalent of Jesse McCartney. Would that be One Direction? They're not even a band anymore. Even that's outdated.
No, I would do like Pitbull, like Mr. Worldwide.
Pitbull is timeless. Pitbull was then and Pitbull is now.
It's Mr. Worldwide, man.
Yeah, Mr. Worldwide, Mr. All Time.
I just like that about this, especially when it comes to like, you know, this not really much happens on this chapter, but like pretty much what happens is they're being dragged and Percy's slowly dying. And I love that, like, the realization that he's a monster.
It specifically is said by Dr. Thorne that the poison only hurts a lot and that it can't kill people.
Yeah, I mean, some animals do that. I think there's a jellyfish that if it stings you, you pretty much, for 2 weeks, you're just incredibly paranoid and think about killing yourself the entire time.
Oh my god. So it just is horrible, but it doesn't kill you. You'll want to die. But it won't let you have the sweet release of death.
No, it doesn't. But it's like, some poisons, all they're really supposed to do is incapacitate a creature.
So Percy's never in any mortal danger, really.
I mean, the Apache helicopter says otherwise, but yes.
Yes, okay. So, yes, he's not going to die from poisoning, though. He's going to die from the rocket being launched at him.
Which is even funnier. Just imagine, like, Percy Jackson getting blown up. Like, how do you explain that?
Like, I'm really imagining a real, like, Wile E. Coyote kind of scenario where he just explodes and there's just sort of like a singed hole in the ground.
But pretty much what happens is, you know, they're being dragged, and Percy kind of finally gets it that Mr. Thorne is actually, like, a monster.
Oh, yeah, now he gets it right. He's like, oh, right, yeah, you have a scorpion tail. I didn't notice that before. I was too busy being poisoned.
As he like turns to like transform. And okay, thinking of this in my imagination, I'm just thinking of like ultimate body horror as this man, like, if you ever see like a manicorn like into the wild, I would just be like, you know what, heart, you can just give out right now because it has the face
so a
of a
manticore is body of a lion, tail of a
scorpion.
And wait, is there another thing?
Yes, the face of a human.
God, that's terrible. That's grotesque. Wait, have I ever told you about the cat with hands?
I've seen that one, yeah.
Have I mentioned on the show, or did I just mention off mic about the cat with hands? I don't even remember.
No, probably not.
If you're willing to get traumatized, Google the short film The Cat with Hands.
That's like the idea of like a reverse centaur, where it's the head of a horse and the body of a man.
And then it falls in love with the centaur, and that's a horse in around 3.
Oh, God.
Horse in around 3, thorn in my heart.
Okay, let's take a minute to appreciate one small thing about Greek mythology. The Greeks didn't mess around with, like, mashing around things. Like, if you really think about it, like, mermaids. Oh, yeah, let's take a human half and a fish half.
What if a person was also a fish? Grotesque.
And you take things like, like sirens. They're pretty much like people heads on crow bodies.
Yeah.
Like they're grotesque looking.
Yeah, all they could think of as far as like character design was like, okay, hear me out, hear me out. It's a horse. Pretty good. Horses are pretty good to begin with. It's got wings, huh? Imagine a horse with wings. That's even cooler than a regular horse.
The one interesting thing that I've noticed when it comes to like Greek mythology is the idea of it's still human, but freaky as hell. Like a cyclops, even though there's been a lot of studies that the Greeks accidentally used to pull up bones of woolly mammoths, and that's where they kind of got the idea of where the nose should have been, would have been like an eye socket to the Greeks. So it's a gigantic human with one eye. Like, there's some merit to like coming up with like mythology, or it's almost like
I'm sure they probably find dinosaur bones and we're just like, gotta explain these giant bones somehow.
Yeah, because you have to, because all mythology is supposed to be, explaining things that are unexplainable at that time, like lightning or rain.
Yeah, I'm looking at a woolly mammoth skull right now, and I could see why you would think that would be a cyclops.
Like, if you really think about how like cool certain things are, like Medusa's like the prime example of it. It's a snake person. Like, that's kind of cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, there's some like OCs.
Well, it's not just a snake person, it's a person with snakes for hair.
But also, it's like you have to think about the time when these stories are being told. They're being told orally, so it's almost like a game of telephone, where they kind of like people start to embellish more things. One of the unique things I found about this chapter as well is kind of like the idea of everyone's kind of useless when they have to deal with this monster, because Annabeth, Grover, and Thalia come, and they have no way of dealing with this Manicore.
Yeah, everything they try, it just doesn't work. Like, they think, oh, well, Talia will surely get this guy. She's, like, so good in battle. And then every time she, like, goes to stab him, he seems to, like, miss or something. Or looks injured, but he's still fine. And, like, he just is sort of, like, impervious to everything that they do.
And even, like, Grover's just like, I'm just here for moral support. I'm in danger.
Yeah, he's just kind of standing around. That's kind of his main role, right? Is just sort of like standing around being like, I'm in danger. That was the whole second book, was him saying, I'm in danger. Ralph Wiggum style.
Even the first book, like, he doesn't really... I love Grover as a character before people send us hate mail, is that I love Grover. He's a really great, like, moral support.
He's comedic relief, though, mainly.
Yeah, like, he isn't really meant to be a type of person that's a fighter. Because, look at his job title. He's supposed to be a seeker.
Right. He seeks things out. He's not... He watches over the Half-Bloods and, like, can keep an eye on them. But it's not his job to be in hand-to-hand combat.
Yes, as they're dealing with... Pretty much, I would like to call this roll for initiative, where this entire scene is just, like, a big old D&D campaign.
We literally get a reference to D&D from one of the Half-Blood students. Was it Nico who said that?
Yeah, from Nico.
Yeah, Nico, he says, a Manticore, Nico gasped. He's got 3,000 attack power, plus 5 to saving throws.
Yeah, I was, like, chuckling a little bit, but then also you have to remember, B, I'm not sure if you remember this, but I remember this certainly, is that when this book was written... model like little figurines and card games were like super popular, really popular. This is Yu-Gi-Oh!
That's
and
true.
This is like Magic's at its height, even though it's still really popular still. But also a lot of card games were using, like, I think they're called like hero clicks, where you would have a card game and you'd have figurines. So it isn't really D&D.
Yeah, they kind of make fun of him for that at some point, because Dr. Thorne is talking all about conscripting them into this weird army that there's kind of like this, they're not super specific about what's going on, but like
it's the Illuminati.
Yeah, they're like of a monster army because there's a great awakening happening or something, where a bunch of monsters that like people aren't used to are going to awaken, and they're going to join this army, and then they're trying to get these Half-Bloods to join them for some reason. Not entirely sure about that. And he says, oh, like you could be like the little toys or whatever that you play with. I don't remember exactly the line.
Well, it's pretty much like those little figurines that you play with. Like, they're not figurines. They're like little models.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, they're not dolls, Mom.
They're not dolls. Like, they got Kung Fu grip, and I could like change the outfit out, and they're really cool.
And they can go to the mall.
Yeah, they can go to the mall. Isn't that right, Ken? My action figure?
Listen, I used to combine playing with my robots and with my Barbies, and it was a really awesome time.
Oh no, for me, like, I used to play with a lot of like Transformers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I wish I kind of like was in the heyday of Star Wars toys, but like you could have so much fun no matter what thing you had. Like it could be a doll, it could be anything. Anything could be anything. I used to play with pens like spaceships. So like
That's true.
if you're bored enough in school, a pen is a spaceship.
I was just in the attic today, and I open a box thinking it might be Christmas decorations, and it's like an entire VW bug for Barbie. And I was like, oh, right, I remember when we had this. It's just in the attic. Like, it's kind of sad that it's up there, just languishing away for no one in particular.
Thanks to Toy Story, you just have nightmares. What if I don't play with my toys anymore? What if they resent me?
Do you realize how much I think about that? Like, every time I, like, look at all those sad, weird Barbies that don't have any nice clothes anymore, and they're all, like, shoved into a weird drawer, like, up in the attic. Like, I know that I'm going to Toy Story hell. I know it. I'm a bad person. I should have donated them. I should have given them to a kid like Bonnie. I understand. I'm bad. I'm a bad person.
Pixar, if you're listening, if you want to do Toy Story 5, you could just make it into a horror movie.
Where they seek revenge. No, that's already been made. It's Soldiers.
Yes, but no, this is different. This is Toy Story, but it's like all the toys that's like, they've been like cast aside and like put in drawers. Like kind of like Wheezy, except Wheezy's kind of like a schlub.
Yeah.
But like having like action figures and stuff. It's like, why haven't you played with me anymore, Andy? I guess the prime example of that would have been like Alonzo Huggenbear. He's like the prime example. Like, you don't play with me anymore. I still smell like strawberries.
Yeah, and then he like has them pushed into the garbage. Yeah. There's always like a whimsical, pudgy character that ends up being a villain in those movies.
Hey, just because Stinky Pete is a villain
doesn't mean all prospectors are villains. Hashtag not all prospectors.
Dang nabbit.
Oh, I was going to say, do you want to get into the sort of... Because we basically described what happened. They're cornered. There really isn't much to do. And then Percy's friends come finally, probably because of the empathy link. And even they can't help. And then out of nowhere, talk about Deus Ex Machina, like literally actual mythical beings appear out of nowhere to help them, sort of help them, but it's complicated and they clearly have history with Talia. Do you want to talk about who those people are?
Oh, yes. My favorite thing about them is I'm thinking about this, and it is such an aesthetic of 2007 of just having like, for people that don't realize this, like 2007 is like the parka year because these girls come out and they're wearing silver parkas and they're wearing like jean pants. Oh, God. Like, all they need is Uggs. And the trifecta would be complete.
Or a North Face jacket. But yeah, I knew someone who had a silver parka, and I called it the intergalactic marshmallow look. Sort of a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man covered in chrome.
I have one of those like Marty McFly jackets now, and they're like really nice, but like they're like they look like life preservers.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I also have a puffy vest because I cosplayed as Dipper, and it is like a life preserver.
But like, here's the aesthetic, and I love that they kind of have again this is literally Deus Ex Machina because we find out that their leader is Artemis, goddess of the hunt. Like literally, a god is saving them.
Yeah, swoops in, and then this is why Dr. Thorne opposes. He's like, wait a second. This is direct interference. This can't be allowed.
That's the ancient laws. You're not allowed to interfere with the ancient laws.
So, like, why are they allowed to help? I don't exactly... Because he's a beast and everything that are beasts are their reign, or is that a real thing? I don't know.
Well, you gotta remember, you have Artemis, goddess of the hunt.
Right.
So she's allowed to hunt monsters, because that is who she is. So it falls underneath like her jurisdiction, I suppose that's the word we're going to use.
Yeah, she checks her license like, oh, I guess I'm allowed to kill you because you're a manticore.
I guess it's Manicore season. No, it's duck season.
Cyclops season, Manicore season, Cyclops season.
Fire! But, I mean, when you have like this aesthetic of like these girls coming out and saving the day, it's almost like heartwarming almost because... It's just like a quaint thing to have now.
It's
just
a nice change of pace, I guess, to see like a bunch of young women be like the heroes. Because I feel like oftentimes it's like the opposite where it's like damsel in distress and then some guy swoops in and saves them. But in this case, it's like a gaggle of teenage girls who helps them. And they're all like so amazingly precise with their archery, like the description of it. Percy just can't even believe that it's people like aiming actual arrows. He can't conceive of how perfectly accurate all of their arrows are.
Especially that Thalia's like annoyed that they're here because they're like, we're here to save the day.
Yeah, she has some sort of history with them, which we haven't specified yet. She knows the names of some of them.
One of my favorite names from this is, I guess their lieutenant is named Zoe Nightshade. Jeez Louise, that sounds like an OC. Like, I want to be badass.
Yeah, my name is Zoe Nightshade. My hair is white and I am gothic.
I listen to only My Chemical Romance, and my heart is the color of blackness. Raw XD.
And Dr. Thorne looked at me and I stuck up my middle finger at him.
But okay, now this is the time what I like to call, this is 2007. We're getting into the time where we have maidens and arrows.
It's starting. It's just starting.
Where it's like a bunch of like teenage girls with bow and arrows going out and hunting. Like this was a trend.
Yeah, I could see that. The archery thing was a thing for a while, huh?
Katniss Everdeen, Zoe Nightshade. We had Merida, and we had like a couple other ones.
Yeah, wasn't there also a girl in Narnia who was?
I think it's Susan.
Susan's it was Susan. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Susan's also the one who like gets banished from from Narnia because she wears lipstick, basically. Misogyny. Anyway.
But like at this time you have like this really badass scene with all these badass women shooting like their badass arrows at this badass manicorn. And it's almost like comedic at this point of where it's Annabeth's like, oh, I gotta show that I'm macho too. So she jumps on the back of Dr. Thorne with her little knife and she's like trying to like stab him. Like this seems like something out of like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and they're like, can you stop already? And they want her to get out of the way so that they could aim the arrows at him.
But Annabeth isn't paying attention. She is like a badass woman that doesn't need a man. And she's like just stabbing this dude. And like, it's the old-timey like fantasy trope of doing this. And if conveniently where they've stopped is where a cliff is. So her and Dr. Thorne fall off this cliff.
They do. They do the old, hold on. What's a movie where they both fall off a cliff at the same time? I feel like that's definitely...
Sherlock Holmes with Moriarty and Sherlock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I'm thinking of Sherlock and other examples like that.
But it's like one of those things where it's like, it's a trope even in fantasy where it's like, if you have a cliff, it's almost like Chekhov's gun. Almost if you see a cliff, someone's going to be thrown off of it or while you're near a cliff.
Someone's going to throw it on the cliff. Yeah, though Percy considers it pretty early on because he's like, oh, there's water down there and I could save myself. But then even Dr. Thorne's like, well, I'll kill you before you hit the water because they're like at a pretty high cliff. So he wouldn't hit the water right away.
No, he'd have some like hang time and to be able to like throw his spears. But before we get to that, my favorite part about this is that Artemis like looks up at the helicopter and she's like, F you guys, and she turns it into birds. So it's like, wait.
Yeah, what a weird power move. It's like, oh, yeah, she thrust out her hand and the helicopter exploded into dust. No, not dust. The black metal dissolved into a flock of birds, ravens, which scattered into the night. I was like, okay, that's a weird flex. It's just turning the helicopter into birds.
Like, that is so badass. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, instead of like blowing it up and having like this huge like action explosion.
She's just like so nonchalant, like, yep, those are birds now. You're welcome.
Instead of like having like the super badass moment where she like turns away and like snaps her fingers and like the whole helicopter explodes and everything's in like slow motion and she's like badass as you see like the colors just overwash the whole screen. She just turns them into birds. She turns the pilots into birds. I hope they live like plenty like birdie lives.
How does that work? So like the pilot did also the helicopter get turned into birds? I don't quite exactly know how the magic worked.
So the entire like fuselage turned into birds and all the people turned into birds?
It's one thing for a person to turn into a bird. They're already an animal. So I'm just trying to think of like the logistics of what a bird that used to be a helicopter would be. Anyway, let's not think too hard about this. Do they gain consciousness as a bird? This thing that used to be a helicopter? Anyway, this is a lot of philosophical questions.
Not really, because like there's some myths where like people came from clay and like the mud and all that stuff.
Right, I guess that's true. So it's just there's like consciousness and everything according to this magic somehow.
Or maybe all birds are made out of Apache helicopters. Maybe we found a global conspiracy.
Artemis is just out here like, here's more birds for you, you ungrateful jerks.
Yeah, maybe Rick Riordan like is trying to secretly tell us that all birds are Apache helicopters.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense that like over the lake I hear the birds going chop 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 chop.
Where you hear like in the distance, like on the wind, you hear Fortunate Son. So guess what, B? Annabeth is dead.
Well, she's not dead.
How do you know?
I don't think she's dead. I don't know. Maybe she is dead. I don't know anything. I know nothing.
You know nothing, B. No,
Exactly.
I mean, like, she did fall off a cliff with the main villain.
And then they asked to help her, and, what does she say? Annabeth, I yelled. You have to let us save her. The auburn-haired girl turned toward me. I'm sorry, Percy Jackson, but your friend is beyond help. That sounds like she's dead, but again, I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't happen this way for her to die.
You gotta remember the auburn-haired girl is Artemis, so she's a god. So maybe she has, like, better authority over this than anyone else.
I guess, but this seems kind of early in the book to kill off Annabeth.
Well, I mean, do I consider it, like, fridging? Not really. Like, fridging would be like, I guess I have to explain this term, right? I guess if I'm gonna bring up fridging, I guess I have to explain it. So, back in the day, there was a Green Lantern comic where the main Green Lantern, I think it was Kyle Rayner, is like, I'm gonna go home to my wife, and he goes home in the first panel, and his wife has been brutally murdered and stuffed into a fridge, and it's supposed to motivate the hero.
Jesus.
But here, maybe, I think because we've been established with like Percy Jackson and Annabeth for a while that it might not be.
That's true. He has his own motivations. I don't think that Annabeth died. I hope she didn't die. This feels a little bit like when the fake out about Tyson dying, where it's just sort of like, okay, yeah, sure, she died, quote unquote, whatever. I don't think that she did.
But the difference between Tyson's death and Annabeth's, quote unquote, if she's dead or not, I don't know. We'll keep reading. Is that they've already established that Tyson can survive explosions and he can be in the water. They never really established that Annabeth could, like, her body can survive, like, free falling into water, you know, which is the equivalent of concrete at that point, and breaking every bone in her body.
Unless, like, for some reason, Rainbow, the magical seahorse, galloped and flew into the air and caught her fall or something. Like, I don't know.
When it comes to this, like, we're so early on in the book where, I mean, to most kids, I'm sure it's a huge shock. Like, honestly, the first time I read this, I was shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because there's been a lot of fake outs as far as deaths are concerned in these books, so I'm not immediately struck with the idea that she's going to be dead. I mean, I do think that there's probably going to be character death, but I don't think it'll happen this way. I think it would probably be during a bigger fight that isn't so early on in the book. I feel like killing off a character so early on is kind of a weird choice, narratively speaking. Like, I feel like it would be further along in the plot.
But B, we're like 3 books in.
Yeah, we're 3 books in, but I'm just thinking as far as like the actual book itself, it just, I don't know. For some reason, it doesn't strike me as something they would do. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she died. I just personally, like, I didn't feel the tension and drama, like, immediately thought, oh, well, she must be dead. Because I have a feeling she's going to be in a couple more books still. But that's just my guess.
That is a pretty good guess. But the way we know it is she's MIA, or at least dead. Like, we also have to come to think about, like, killing a kid in a book is, like, some serious, like, it's pretty dark. Like,
pretty dark.
Once you go off that road, like, you kind of, like, gain a reputation almost. Like, there's, like, a reason why people joke with George R. R. Martin about, like, killing so many characters. Like, it's something that just happens. Like, if you kill off your characters, like, just be prepared to, like, if you do it, you're just gonna get, like, a bunch of hate mail.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Annabeth died. It just, the timing doesn't seem right, and the lead up to it doesn't seem dramatic or fraught enough for it to make sense. But I could see her being incapacitated in some way as a result of this, but not dead.
Now, I have a question for you, B. Do you think any character in this book series are gonna actually die?
Yeah, I said I do think that probably 1 or 2 are gonna die, but probably maybe later on in the series. I could see it even in this book, but maybe later in the story. I feel like the scene would be written differently if she actually died.
Oh, so it would basically be like she's been shot and Percy's like holding her in her arms.
Not quite that, but I feel like the impact of it would just be different. I don't know. Again, I'm just taking shots in the dark. I could be totally wrong, but that's just like my personal interpretation of this chapter.
When it comes to like writing like main characters like deaths, if you're gonna do it, like I'm gonna like give examples. Is like you have characters. It's either you get like a point of view version of them, and then they just like they close their eyes and everything went black, or you have examples of like in Game of Thrones. I'm not gonna name any names, but there's characters like they die, and like the thing is like they're holding like someone's holding that person,
And it's the whole dramatic thing of like, don't die on me and all
yeah, and
that.
they're like looking up and like they're trying to speak their last words. Like there's like dramatic, and then there's subtle. And then there's some like, again, I'm going to use Game of Thrones because I think how the deaths are treated in that are really good because they're very realistic. Is that sometimes you have a chapter where you see it from a different person's perspective. So it's like, oh, obviously that person's not going to die. And then it's like, oh no, they're dead. But that doesn't happen in Percy Jackson because we only have one narrator, and that's Percy Jackson.
It's true. And he's not a perfect narrator because he's only a novice to a lot of these things. He's learning along with the audience, as we've talked about. So he's not like omniscient in any way, other than it's told from the future of some non-specific origin. But it's told in past tense, so he like knows what happens, basically.
Unlike like Harry Potter, where it's like written as it's going on rather than, well, then I thought of this or this. Is like, well, Harry thought of this.
Yeah, we talked about this actually way long ago when we first started The Lightning Thief, where I was trying to figure out, like, okay, so the narrator, he's speaking from the future, but we don't know when.
Okay, like, if he's, like, speaking from the future, you would think he would want to try to, like, update the references. Like, yeah, they're, like, listening to, like, Jesse McCarthy. Remember that old band?
Well, I mean, I guess Jesse McCarthy, but he wouldn't update the references because it's things that actually happened to him, and it's not a fictional story. So if it happened during that time, then Jesse McCartney, do you see what I'm saying, though? Like, there'd be no reason for him to update the references because it's not fiction.
What is it? The best way to put it is you would think there'd be like structure kind of like the ending of like Stand By Me or like The Sandlot, where they give like an epilogue.
Yeah, or like The Wonder Years, like, I still look back with wonder. That was the last summer I saw Annabeth because she fell into a cliff. Actually, it was winter, but anyway.
So the chapter kind of ends with the Hunters of Artemis are here to rescue them. Everyone's safe. Percy Jackson is like completely like traumatized because he just saw his best friend or one of his best friends jump off a cliff because Annabeth kind of was an idiot in this situation. Doesn't that seem kind of weird? Like a little bit. It's like for someone that's very smart, you would think that if they're shooting arrows at the Manicorn, she would want to stay where she is, or she would want to hop off because everyone's trying to get a clean shot. It's almost like she's trying to like impress somebody or something.
Yeah, I actually found this behavior to be very Clarice reminiscent in some ways, to be like, oh, I could fight this without you guys kind of thing.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's just like for a person that's the daughter of Athena, she's kind of acting like a moron a little bit. Like even like the Hunters of Artemis are like yelling at her to like get off because they can't get a clean shot.
It's kind of frustrating because she is so smart. She's known for being smart and good at planning ways of attack, but then she just kind of gets her hubris gets the best of her, which we kind of talked about in the last book, that hubris is one of her fatal flaws, so to speak.
Yeah, it seems like something that she'd probably want to try to work on, but you know, I don't write books.
Yeah.
So there's one thing I want to talk about before we finish this, B, and that is the weirdest description that I saw of this was the description they gave to Zoe Nightshade. And how she has like copper tan skin and she was like a Persian goddess.
Yeah, that struck me as a little weirdly, what's the word I'm looking for, exoticizing of her in like a spooky way. I don't know. You probably wouldn't see that written today the way it was, like, oh, she looked very ethnic. Like, I don't know. There was just something about that description that struck me as a little strange.
I just thought it was like a really funny, poorly written like description tag they have, rather than she had copper skin. That's all you need to know, rather than ooh.
Yeah, you don't need to say the weird Persian princess that just kind of crossed the line into like vaguely, weirdly racialized for no reason.
I don't think it was like racialized. I think it was just like, oh, we're trying to place it.
But like not intentional, but just sort of like, oh, she's so exotic. She looked like that. Like, I don't know. There's just something about the way it was described.
She looked like Jasmine from Aladdin.
Yeah, God.
The other description they give is this other girl who has like auburn hair, and that turns out to be Artemis, goddess of the hunt.
Artemis herself. So I don't know why she looks so young, right?
In the myths, Artemis is a maiden.
So she just stays young forever?
we'll probably get more into it in the next chapter, but Artemis is supposed to be the maiden of the hunt. She's sworn off all men, and she's
And as a
supposed to be
result, her skin looks great. She's like, from not dealing with guys, my skin is wrinkle-free.
But it's also the idea of Artemis is supposed to also symbolize like purity, almost. I mean, it would make sense that she'd want to be a girl or come out in because gods can change their appearance, because we've seen that already with like Hades, we've seen that with good old fashioned Ares, we've seen that even with Poseidon, like they change how they look.
Right, to adapt them to a more modern look.
All I'm thinking of is like Artemis is like a Valley girl, takes on the Valley girl accent, like, oh my god, like we're gonna go hunting. Get in, losers, we're going hunting. So B, what is the name of the next chapter?
Bianca D'Angelo makes a choice.
Oh my gosh. What choice do you think that might be?
Right, I keep forgetting about these other demigods, like who are their godly parents, what's going on with them, what are their abilities? They could be a real game changer as far as like what's going on in the plot. I don't know what choice it would be. Would it be to join the army with Dr. Thor? But no, he's already destroyed, so I don't even know what... I guess you would have to make the choice to like come with them to Camp Half-Blood or to become... Is she the daughter of Artemis? They're both children of Artemis? And she could decide to be a hunter, maybe? That might be the decisions she's making. Those are kinds of my general choices, having to do something with her godly parentage and like where she's going to end up now that she can escape this weird military school.
It could also be the thing of it's like she doesn't want to believe that her parents are gods, so it's like she kind of like rejects it, and it's like what happens if someone doesn't want to believe?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I kind of don't know. We also will see what happened to Annabeth as far as if she's dead or not. I don't think she's dead.
Oh, yeah, that could be a thing. It's just like, don't worry, guys, I'm all right. It's like,
right, she just scrapes, like, pulls herself upward over the edge of the cliff. Like, I'm fine. Her hair is, like, all messed up and wet, and, like, her face is covered in, like, grime and, like, garbage from falling off the cliff, and then she's somehow still okay. That'd be pretty funny.
That would be funny. Or it's like the idea, like in like Austin Powers, when you have Will Ferrell, like he falls off a cliff and you don't see like him horribly damaged. You just see, it kind of hurts. The wound, it kind of smells like almonds. Could you get me a Band-Aid?
Kind of smells like almonds.
But yeah, we'll figure this out next week. Maybe there might be some new things, maybe some new developments. A lot of this chapter there's not really much we can like cover and review for this because it's just a fight scene.
Yeah, basically. And then the stuff about the Hunters of Artemis appearing and all of that stuff, but we kind of covered that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like hard to like talk about this chapter without just talking about fight scenes, and we've gone over, it's like, you either like fight scenes or you don't, which... I like fight scenes to an extent, but like when it's like, and then he parried, and then he blocked, and then he parried again, and then there was a stabbing. Like, it's not fun to read.
The other plot stuff going on was enough for me to care about it, I think.
And I think this was also a good chapter for if you like action scenes. The whole chapter is pretty much on a cliff. There's a helicopter, there's danger, there's suspense, and then there's like maybe death or longing and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what happens in the next chapter. I want to see if Annabeth died. Probably didn't. What's going on with the Hunters of Artemis? What's going on with these little half-blood kids who are now going to escape their weird military school? There's a lot to follow through with this. Not to mention all the other spooky stuff going on with Kronos and Luke in the background that we have to worry about, so...
Especially with this new general, apparently, and this paramilitary strike force.
Oh, right. Yeah, and then the whole thing with the army of monsters and the Great Awakening or whatever they call it. There's a lot going on plot-wise. This is really building to something much larger, I can tell.
So, B, did we get any iTunes reviews this week?
Yeah, we got one from BC Fawcett, who says, 10 stars. Hey, I'm a 12-year-old in Texas, and I love Percy Jackson. I love it so much that I have a friend who doesn't like it, but has some of the facts down because I talk about it so much. I love y'all, and hope you have fun. By the way, you don't need to read the Kane Chronicles until much later, and to read Magnus Chase and the Ship of the Dead, you need to read Heroes of Olympus and the Trials of Apollos at least. I love y'all, and thank you for doing this. I only wish you had enough to have a P.O. box, and y'all need an Instagram page. Have an amazing day. Love, Gideon. Yeah, we don't. I mean, I have an Instagram if you want to follow my Instagram. We don't have a specific Radio Camp Half-Blood one.
Yeah, well, I guess we could get an Instagram, but like, what would you want us to like post pictures about?
Yeah, what would we post? Just sort of pictures of Greek-inspired things or something. Yeah, I don't know what I would take pictures of. Maybe if I made more merch and stuff like that, or like updates about the show. But
so pretty much like what we would do is just go to a bunch of Greek restaurants within our towns and just take pictures of our food.
Yeah, here's me eating moussaka. Delicious.
Don't you want a gyro? This is so good.
This gyro is amazing. Oh man, now I want a gyro. Delicious.
I like gyros, actually. They're really... Hi, guys. We're going to talk about food for like 6 hours, so I'm going to cut this right now. But that's such a really nice email, especially like maybe we could do a P.O. box, but like no one's really wanted to send us really anything. Like usually most of the stuff that we've gotten has been just emails about like just fan art. People have just sent us fan art. It's not really, we don't.
Yeah, fan art is cool because then you can always scan it and just send it. Yeah, we don't have a P.O. box. It's kind of like weirdly expensive to like maintain 1 month to month. I don't know if I'm maybe looking at it wrong and that there's an easier, less expensive way to do it. But as far as like monthly costs, we wouldn't be able to maintain it with like what we get from Patreon.
The problem though is when it comes to like with like P.O. boxes, it's like we either have to get one and it's like really weird because like I have to like, you have to like go to like a marked location and like open it up with your key and you're just like, oh, there's nothing this month. Oh.
Yeah, you have to remember to check it. And also, we live on opposite sides of the country. So we would have to have two if you wanted to send us something specifically for both of us. Or you would have to send it to one of us and then they would have to mail it to the other. I wish there was a way to do it that was easier and like less, like ridiculously expensive, but alas.
But thank you so much for sending that wonderful iTunes review. It always means a lot, especially it's a 10-star review. Like, that's some crazy, like, bull when it comes to, like, 10 stars. Did they unlock, like, the super, like, secret cheat code method? So, yeah, B, we actually did get a couple emails this week. So we got one from Amelie. You guys inspired me to reread the Percy Jackson Olympian book series after just finishing it. Thank you so much. And then underneath it says, I love this podcast! So many, like, exclamation marks and then a smiley face.
That's nice. Nice and to the point.
Thank you so much for that wonderful message. I mean, it is perfectly acceptable to read or reread book series again. Like, I do it all the time. So pick it up. Be like, I want to experience this again. That's fine. You can do that.
Huh. We got another pretty long email from V who says, Hi, Zack and B. I'm a longtime listener, and I have been in love with the Percy Jackson Olympians universe since 3rd grade, when my mom started reading The Lightning Thief with me to help my reading. I had a really hard time with reading as a kid. I learned recently I actually have dyslexia, lol, what a coincidence. Anyways, I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm currently in an AP language and composition class. In this class, we did an exercise of sorting media into steak, has value, and entertainment. Potato chips, entertaining but has no value, and turnips, has value but isn't entertaining. Our class voted Percy Jackson into the potato chip section, so in a response paper we were just assigned, I wrote about why I disagreed with that. I mentioned you guys and your analysis of the series. Anyway, I just wanted to share how Percy Jackson made its way into my AP English class and thought it might be a cool discussion for the podcast. Also, will you ever have more guests on? I'd love to share my experiences being someone who grew up with the series. Sorry, this is so super long. Happy holidays, best, V. What a nice long message.
Oh, that's super nice. Thank you, V.
Thank you for mentioning us in your class. Yeah, Percy Jackson's not entertaining but has no value. That's completely ridiculous. It's completely based on teaching children how to interpret Greek mythology. Like, infotainment is like the main draw of the series. I don't really understand why you would call it potato chips.
The one thing I would say about Percy Jackson is you're going to learn a couple things. Like, this is like one of those one series where you actually, it's not trashy. It actually, like, you actually learn a couple things.
Yeah, just because it makes like pop culture references and is relatable to children, I don't think that it inherently makes it not valuable. And I think that that's actually one of the main issues that a lot of people have when it comes to like judging YA and children's books, is they go, oh, well, this is for kids because it's like silly and it talks about modern things and it caters to the lowest common denominator or whatever. But just because they make references to Jesse McCartney or whatever doesn't mean that it doesn't also teach you what a manticore is, or teach you like the story of the Odyssey, or all these different, mythology things that I didn't even know about. So I think that's kind of silly that someone would say that it's potato chips. I'm glad that you disagreed with them and wrote a paper about it, because I agree with you.
Yeah, no, it's like when it comes to like this book series, there's a lot of books that I could consider potato chips, like a lot of like R.L. Stein.
Yeah, exactly. Just like silly.
It's like, it's supposed to be like, I call it disposable literature almost, where you can read it. Like, I love like Goosebumps and all that stuff, but it's supposed to just be entertainment. Like here with like Percy Jackson, you learn some things. Even Series of Unfortunate Events, you actually learn about a lot of like words and things. Maybe it's like the stigma of, oh, because it's like a kid's book, it's potato chips. It's like, oh, it's not good for you. Let's just read some Hemingway, or we'll read some Steinbeck. Like, no. Like, some of my favorite books are what you would consider kids' books, like Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Fantastic book. It's about just growing up and kind of like what happens when you become a kid to becoming a man. It's like one of the best books about that. And most people consider it potato chip literature, but it's super good. It's super scary.
I think books aimed at a younger audience tend to get dismissed outright, without people actually looking at what the content is. I find it very shocking that Percy Jackson got sorted into potato chip category, though, because if anything, some people might be like, oh, well, I don't enjoy it, but it is valuable as far as like education. I'm sure that there are tons of middle grade like Greek classes or classics classes that use Percy Jackson as a means to teach. So I don't really understand why anybody would make that argument.
Maybe because you guys are, no offense, like you guys are sophomores, is that you're still in that weird development phase where it's like, Percy Jackson, I'm too old for that. Like, it's obviously going to be potato chips.
Oh, so they just like dismiss it as being silly, I guess.
Yeah, that's baby stuff.
I could see that maybe. Because, well, yeah, I guess it was your class, right? You said our class voted Percy Jackson in the potato chip section. Maybe they're not particularly familiar with Percy Jackson, because it just seems like a fun, action-y thing, and maybe they saw the movie with Logan Lerman and they just assumed it was more of just like a fun thing.
I'm curious, like, what did Harry Potter or like any of those series, like Hunger Games?
Yeah, because Harry Potter I could even sort into has value as well, because that to some extent teaches you like certain fantasy things, and it teaches you the value of like problem solving and friendship. Yeah, like those emotional things that are taught are also important, valuable lessons. So, I mean, you could even say, like you mentioned like something like Goosebumps, even has value. Like, it's weird to say that a book doesn't have value, because then you're like saying, okay, well, what am I learning out of this? Even if it's not necessarily like a textbook, like educational thing, it could still be valuable to like your development as far as if you're a person, you know what I mean?
But you're not gonna get like value out of like a Harlequin like novel, like unless like you're like some weird like middle-aged housewife that's just the fantasies you have, and eventually maybe it might pay off. Like, there's certain books that are just supposed to be there for pure entertainment. You don't need to necessarily learn anything. Like, yes, okay, I admit that I've learned some things from Goosebumps, but a lot of the time, like, some of them are like, let's look at Fear Street. It's all about like teenage problems. Like, did Jerry really kiss that girl? It's like stuff like that. Like, there's some books that it's just pure entertainment. I would consider Ready Player One pure entertainment.
Yeah.
There's certain books like The Name of the Wind is one of those books where it is not a potato chip. It is like a full course meal, and you're gonna get like desserts, and you're gonna get like different like sample platter. Like, it's like a buffet. But like, there's certain books that just are there for pure entertainment. Like that, to say that like every book is supposed to be like there for like value, like you're gonna learn something. True. There's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of stigmas for that. But then again, there's a lot of books that you don't learn anything. Or maybe you may even learn misinformation.
That's true too. Yeah. I'm not saying that there aren't books that don't have value, but I think to specifically say a book doesn't have value because it's like too entertaining or something, or it doesn't just teach academic things, because also teaching like life lessons are equally important, I would say. Did we get any other emails?
Yes, we did. So we got one from Georgia. Hey, Zack and B, it's me again. In chapter 19 of the last book, you guys were talking about how unfair it is for Poseidon to be so vague with Percy. My theory is that the gods can glimpse into the near future and who it concerns. If it's their kids, they can't intervene by ancient law. You also talked about the relationships between gods and how that affects demigods. Rick, hashtag troll Riordan, touches on this throughout the series, but never really explains it until Heroes of Olympus. I won't spoil anything, but it explains that the gods are all related with each other, and that doesn't affect their demigod children. Demigods can date other people from different cabins, but you cannot date someone from your own cabin. I know it's confusing, but it will be vague when it makes sense just as the books go on. Thanks for bearing with me with the super long bye from Australia. I mean, I think it's like a given that you shouldn't date someone in your own cabin.
Yeah, because then you're legitimately siblings, right? Or at least half siblings. Not great, Bob.
I guess the best way to put it is it's still a little weird and creepy no matter which way you paint it. It's kind of like, what is it, like murdering somebody and like a crime of passion?
Mm-hmm.
They're the exact same thing, except one's motivated by emotions. The other one's just pure murder. Or it's like the idea of like you can have like a tin shack. You can paint it a different color and call it a wooden cabin. But in the end of the day, it's still going to be a tin shack.
So you're saying it's creepy even if there is technical rules as to why it's not creepy.
You can embellish it and you can tell whatever you want about it, but like in the end of the day, they're still technically related.
Yeah, it squicks me out still. It just does. I don't think I'll get over that.
Okay, even if like they're really distant cousins, like it's like a really tricky road to explain.
Yeah, then you go like down like the Roosevelt path where you're like, are you distantly related? Still weird.
Oh, what is it? What is this? You have hemophilia? Oh, that's the royal blood disease, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they all have like really messed up Habsburg jaws, all of like the demigods because they're so inbred.
I think B gets the buzzer for today. I wasn't going to say inbred or incest, but here we go. But thank you so much for that email. We really appreciate it. So that's all the emails that we got for this week. Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate all the emails that you send to us, and we love responding to you guys. It's a lot of fun. It's like a barrel of laughs. So, B, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com. And if you want to follow an Instagram, I also am on Instagram at also bkellygorman.
If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me on Twitter at Suda41. That's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. And if you want to email our show, you can email us at radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. We also have t-shirts available at TeePublic. Just type in TeePublic and you'll see what's up there. We also have a Patreon/RadioCampHalfBlood. There's going to be some more updated content very soon. You'll be getting exclusive content. Helps keeps the lights on a little bit.
Yeah, if we maybe get the funds on Patreon, we could figure out a P.O. box, maybe? I don't know. We still live on opposite sides of the country, so it's still kind of a logistical nightmare, but we'll see.
Well, the next book that we're going to be reviewing, do you want to talk about it, B? What book are we reviewing next on our Patreon?
You mean the Christmas gift that you gave me?
Yes. What are we going to be reading next time?
We're going to be reading Ready Player One. A lovely gift from my friend Zack. I actually kind of enjoyed the movie, believe it or not. I kept hearing bad things about it, but I actually had fun watching it, so we'll see what I think about the book.
Yes, the book is like apples and oranges compared to the movie, but we will find out. Well, I think that kind of like wraps up the show. Any advice for the kids, B?
Any advice? Oh man, just don't decide to make like 75 types of Christmas cookies and then wait till the last minute to finish them, because then you'll go crazy. And that's what happened to me. That's my villain origin story.
What would you be called? The baker?
Yeah.
Well, my advice would be if you like jump on the back of like a supernatural creature and someone's trying to fire an arrow, just get off. It's okay. You know, you don't have to look so macho. Just jump off and survive.
Yeah, just, take your pride, stuff it deep inside of you, and don't jump off a cliff. That's good advice, too.
Unless your friend tells you to. Well, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
and keep staying mortal.
Bye, guys.
Bye.